Welcome to the Beyond Anxiety podcast, where we talk about dismantling mental health stigmas, mental health awareness through education, and strategies for overcoming mental health challenges. I'm your host, Darius, and I'm a mental health and therapy advocate, published author, speaker, and coach. I'm so glad you decided to tune in and listen, and I'm so excited to get into this next episode. Welcome, and please like, subscribe, follow, comment, and enjoy. And welcome back to the Beyond Anxiety podcast. I'm your host, Darius. We are now in season 2. Let me tell you something, y'all. Season 1 was great, but it was mostly just me. And then season 2, I'm going to be having all types of guests on so they can share their life experience, their expertise, and all the things related to mental health. And, to be honest, goodness, all the stuff that I was talking about and wrote my book about and being guests on other podcasts about, every now and then you get undisciplined and your body tells on you. And so I had to be honest about myself and where I was and say, you know what, we need to pump the brakes a little bit and get my body regulated again. I had some blood work done, and that's another thing, y'all. Make sure you go. Don't skip your annuals. I'm in my 40s now. Go get your blood work. All the exams and everything that come along with those, get it done. Because I had some things that showed me, hey, if you don't change your lifestyle and habits, we about to put you on these pills. And I was like, yeah, say less. Let me go ahead and put some things on pause and take care of what I need to do. And so I'm back in a good place. I lost 40 pounds. So yeah, it's like, you start talking about medicine. I'm like, I'm good. But now that we are in season 2, I'm excited to talk with a guest who I had the pleasure of being a guest on 2 different podcasts of his, one being Deal to Heal and the other being the Girl Dad Discussions. He's been an inspiration for me in the work that I do in mental health. He's kind of helped me get to where I am in terms of developing my own podcast. I remember when we got to the end of his episode and we turned the record button off, I was like, hey man, whatever you could give some tips to someone who's trying to get up and going. And, I retained a good portion of that information. And now here I am in the game, and I'm on the other side of the chair, and I'm able to have the pleasure of being a host and have him on. And so just a quick summary of him. He is an author, a speaker, father, minister, and also a podcast host. And it is such a pleasure to have you here. Now, I noticed on some of your podcasts, you go by E. James. I noticed the full spelling is Earnest. And so I'm like, well, which one do I refer to you to? Because I know some people have nicknames. Some people use their middle name. Some people want to be called Mr. whatever. But I just want you to tell us about yourself, who you are, and introduce yourself to the folks.
Yeah, no problem. First of all, let me say thank you for having me on, man. As you know, it's always great to be on this side of the mic because I ain't got to do nothing but talk. You know what I mean? So I'm good at that. So I'm like, cool, I can just show up and just talk. All right, good. So yeah, I'm just Earnest, man. Just call me Earnest. Usually if you see something that says E. James, it's usually just something that's for like media purposes or something like that. I know the podcast is called, Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Right. And even the Girl Dad Discussions is Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. And that's just for that. But generally when I'm on as a guest or whatever, just Earnest, you know what I mean? Okay. I'm just me,
I had to check, man, because don't be calling me by my first name. You don't know me like that.
Right. Don't be calling about my government, But it's all good, man. So, I'm just at my core, I'm just a guy that loves people. You know what I mean? Speaker, author, podcaster, workshop facilitator, just all things that and ways that I can help other people. It's what I've been doing and, even trying to do even more. So I started the podcast. We just recently hit over 200 episodes now at this point for the Deal to Heal podcast, which you was on. So I definitely appreciate you, and we started the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. I'm only like 50 some episodes on that podcast, but yeah, just out here trying to spread a message of hope and healing, man, and, be vulnerable and share my story and open up that door to make it easier for others to share their story, which is why I was glad when we connected, as men and talk about mental health and just like, yo, this is what I went through, this is what I dealt with. And by us doing that, it opens up the doors for other men and other people in general, but especially men, to be like, hey, I'm dealing with that too. You know what I'm saying? And be able to be vulnerable, because it's only when we are vulnerable enough to admit the things that we're dealing with that we open up the door to receive the help to help us to get through it. And it's so many times that we are trying to push through on our own, that when we get to the point where we can't push through no more, and if we're not asking for help, that's when we find ourselves in those dark spaces and things start to feel hopeless, because it's like, I can't do anything else. And it was like, yes, you got one more thing you could do. You can ask for help. You know what I'm saying? And just by asking for help, that, opens up a whole, array of resources that you didn't have on your own. So, yeah. And, don't get me talking, man. I keep going. You got to ask the questions, because I just be like, bleh.
Listen, today is about you, man. I'm a host, and I just want to pull, your experiences out and things you've been through, and even like, mistakes and things where you're like, if I could help somebody else not walk into that burning building, here's what I would tell them, that you may want to consider this, for what you're dealing with. But this is a perfect segue into what I want to get into, and you mentioned it, which is just the stigmas, especially for men and especially for Black men. When you mentioned and you talked about, being in that dark place, for me, that's what it took before I finally asked for help. And the reason why it happened that way was because, growing up, seeing a therapist or going to get some type of help for something mental, you were considered either crazy, lazy, or just something was wrong with you. And I was like, well, I'll just sort of man up and figure it out. But my old mentality was more so about whatever I had a problem, I would just put brute force effort into it. Right. And when you're in your 20s, you can get away with that. Your 30s, you can sort of do it. But when I hit my 40s, my body and brain was like, yeah, bro, we're going to have to stop you there. We didn't co-sign this, and you're going to get these nice heart palpitations. You're not going to get no sleep. You're going to feel like you can't breathe. Your chest's going to get tight. And so walk me through some of your experiences that maybe you've gone through personally, or you watch other people go through and you're like, man, this could have been prevented had these stigmas not been in place to prevent you from getting help.
Oh man, that can take all day, right? Growing up in the church, man, and one of the biggest hurdles that we as a community has faced, especially as a community which include believers, is like you had to choose one or the other. It was like you either choose church or you choose therapy. You know what I mean? It's like you believe in God and God is going to answer all your prayers, or you believe in a therapist and he's going to help you out. But you can't do both.
Right.
And the reality of it is it takes both. You know what I mean? Yes. We are a natural man and we have a spiritual man, and they are two separate things in the same body. And so we have to address it that way. There are some things that spiritually that, the therapist may not be able to walk you through. Those are some spiritual things that you got to work out with God. But on the other hand, there are some things that even God is not going to do, because that's, you know what I'm saying? Like, you got control over that. You just need the right things in your natural to be able to handle that, right? And so, growing up in the church, that was always like that, like you said, that stigma too, as in, number one, you got to choose one or the other, which is doesn't make sense, because like I said, even the Bible says first natural, then spiritual, because we are a natural man and a spiritual man in one body. So number one, we got to have both, because that's what it takes for us to maintain. Number one. So number two, also that stigma that if you did go to a therapist or, psychiatrist, is like some kind of way that you're crazy and that you get labeled as being crazy. And I'm like, all of us is crazy. You know, let me just throw it out there. Like, stop playing, man. We all got some issues that we're dealing with, you know, one way or another.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it's just because of life, period, because of life, because the traumas that we deal with, because of things that we've seen or experienced, even the smallest thing affects you. Right. So yesterday, I'll give you a prime example. I used to ride motorcycles. Right. I rode motorcycles for years. Then I stopped, you know, just like, all right, you know, I'm 49 now. I'm like, yeah, I'm good on that. You know what I'm saying? So my little cousin just started riding. Right. He just bought his first motorcycle. He just started riding. And he's like, won't you come ride with me? And I'm like, cuz, you know, I ain't been on a motorcycle in 10 years.
And
you know, he's like, you know, come jump on mine. You can ride, whatever. I'm like, it's not that I can't. I want to, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'm almost empty. I'm past that stage now. But yesterday I took a mental health day yesterday, right?
Good.
I called my boss. I'm like, look, I need Friday off. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? I just need a break. Right. And so he's like, all right. So he gave me Friday off. And so I purposely made sure that I was like, I'm not doing anything that has to do with work today. Like, I'm just going to do things that I enjoy. And even that was, you have to force myself to do that because you got so many responsibilities, you know, as a man and as a father and different things. Like, you got a whole lot of stuff that you're responsible for, but it all starts, you got to be responsible for you as well. And so I literally had to force myself, like, I'm not doing anything that has to do with work or business today. It's going to be all, you know, kind of enjoyment and relaxation. And so I went, got up early, met my friend. We went hiking and I actually was there before they got there, maybe an hour before they got there. So I ended up doing like a 3-hour hike, you know what I'm saying? And then we left there and I'm like, you know, it's still nice. My other favorite place to be outside of hiking is the beach. So I'm like, I'm gonna go to the beach, you know. And so I went to the beach and I, you know, just like put my feet in the water and walked along the shore, you know. But one of the things that happened while I was there, there's a couple guys was on the not the motorcycles, but like the mini bikes, you know. And so they're coming down the street. It's two of them. They're coming down, and one guy pops a wheelie, and he's like doing a wheelie, you know, towards me or whatever. And I'm looking at him, and I'm saying to myself, "Man, don't fall." You know what I mean? And sure enough, he flips back. You know, he flips back on the motorcycle. He slides, and then he starts rolling. And as he's rolling, his friend is trying to avoid him and like runs over his legs. You know what I'm saying? And you know, with the adrenaline, he popped right up. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, let me, you know, turn the bike off and all that stuff. But I'm like, are you good? You know what I mean? Like, he's like, no, I'm good, whatever. But I know that adrenaline. You know what I mean? I'm like, bro,
you're not good.
Because right now you're that blood is pumping, but when you start calming down, you're gonna feel it in your legs, you're gonna feel it in your back, you know what I mean? You're gonna feel all that. Luckily he had a helmet on, so he didn't hit his head. But those little things that happen, you know, like in that moment, it wasn't that, I mean, it was a big deal that I seen it, but it didn't really take an effect on me at the moment too much. But after I process it a little bit more, even now, and I think about, you know, how bad that could have been. And then I think about me riding, and I think about, you know, almost getting hit by a car once when I was riding, you know, I mean, like, all those things bring back to your memory, and all those things affect you. You know, even if you don't realize that it's affecting you, it's affecting your decisions. It's affecting how you act. You know what I mean? It's like now, even now, like I said, my little cousin want me to ride, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? I was thinking about it, like, all right, maybe I'll ride with him once or twice, and but now I'm like, yeah, maybe not. You know what I'm saying? But
you said
all those things, all those things that we experience and that we see, it affects our lives even when we don't realize it. And so, you know, growing up with these different stigmas, like, okay, you either got to choose one or the other, or, you know, if you go to, you know, the therapist or you seek help in a certain way, you're labeled to be crazy and whatever. And like I said, I think all of us are crazy to a certain extent. You know, all of us have issues, you know, that we deal with. My issues might just be different than yours.
Right.
And I might be strong in some areas that you're weak in, or you might be weak in some areas that I'm strong in. You know, you just mentioned that you lost 40 pounds. I've been
Yep.
fighting trying to lose 10 pounds for like the last year. And like, it just keeps going up and down. Right. But it's in that 10 pound mark. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to get past it, but I just keep on fluctuating right in there, you know? And even yesterday I weighed myself and I started writing down, you know? So yesterday I weighed myself, and then this morning I weighed myself again. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna start weighing myself every day to really, you know, focus on it again. But you know what I'm saying? Like that 40 pounds that you lost, you know, you may be stronger in that area than I am. You know what I'm saying? But then it may be another area that I'm stronger in than you are. But if I compared myself to like, oh man, Darius lost 40 pounds, I can't lose 5. You know what I'm saying? Then now I'm putting this other stress on me that is not needed, you know, just because we might be in the same direction, but different journeys. You know what I'm saying? We're going in the same direction, but we're on different streets. You know what I mean? Your street might have more hills, and mine might be flat at a certain point. And then mine, I hit a pothole, and you good, and you going right. You know what I'm saying? So just the way that life works, but not allowing our community, not allowing, you know, our friends and family, not even allowing ourselves sometimes to talk us out of doing the necessary work that we have to do for our individual self, for our mental space, you know what I mean? And so living outside of those stigmas, and really, when you hear the stigma, taking the time to really evaluate the truth behind it. You know what I mean? And just like, no, I'm not going to allow, you know, something someone else says or something someone else believes to change the way I think and I act, you know, especially when it's in my best interest.
Yeah, I mean, you hit, man. You said so many key things I want to highlight and get some additional information from you. And the first kind of theme I heard was just your awareness with your recent, you know, taking your mental health day. And so many times we will hit that override button. And that's what got me in trouble. Like I could see signs, symptoms, or just like, yeah, I'm a little extra tired today. Like, nope, hit the override button and, you know, quote unquote, man up. But you mentioned about like just awareness. And for me, it took a crisis mode and pain. Sometimes pain has to be the teacher. And it doesn't have to be. And I was full of regret after the fact.
Right.
But some things, especially the nervous system, not going to give you a quick recovery. I mean, there are certain medicines that can kind of help like numb it and make a little bit better, but now you have a dependency on that. But true healing, especially for that, and maybe over decades, you've been hitting that override button over and over again.
Yep.
And ignoring the awareness. I think that's such a key point that you just made to say, you know what? I'm not thinking about work. And then you went out in nature, you put your feet in the water. You know, there's a lot of people that are into grounding and other things like that. I haven't looked too deeply into it, but man, sometimes you just got to take your shoes and socks off, man. Just feel that grass, feel that water, and just allow your body to just be still and unplug from everything. But I think because of, and this is kind of the next kind of bullet point, is the expectations that we have of ourselves, that we have as men, that we have as maybe a coworker, that we will ignore the awareness and click the override button. And then when crisis mode comes, it's like, oh God, what do I do now? You know, and for myself, I found myself in uncharted territory where the very thing that gave me success, which was brute force, was actually hurting me now. And I'm like, well, what if that was my MO? I don't know how I'm supposed to come out of this, because there were times I was like, okay, I'm just going to buck harder and I'm going to beat this thing. And that was the very thing that was feeding it and making it worse. And for me, it was being diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, depression, fibromyalgia, GERD, heart palpitation, tachycardia, all those things had converged all at one time, you know, and there was no manning up. There was no, oh, just be strong or hit the override button. That's what got you there. And so for me, that was my breaking point of, okay, I need to ask for help. And I'm going to have to maybe do some things that maybe are unconventional or I don't have an expertise in. And I have to trust that somebody else's expertise is going to help walk me out of this. Like you mentioned about losing weight and stuff. I didn't do that on my own. I went to see a dietitian, So matter of fact, I meet with them next week because I fell off a little bit. So I lost 40 and put 10 back on. But because I have that, that scheduled meeting waiting for me, I'm going to get back on track because now we can ask the question, well, what led up to that?
Yeah. And I think you mentioned about the awareness, and I think the awareness is key, right? Because there's so much around us that if we pay attention to it, that it'll let us know, like, okay, some things need to be addressed, right? And I always one of the things I talk about is pain, right? And you talk about pain and I say pain is your friend because pain allows you to know that something needs to be addressed. You know what I'm saying? Like if you didn't feel no pain, if you didn't feel no pain and you had something happen, like somebody stabbed you in the back, like physically with a knife, and you couldn't feel it, you would bleed out. You know what I'm saying? So pain is allowing you to say, hey, it's something back here that ain't right. You need to be addressed. So whether it's physically or mentally, when you start feeling a certain type of way, that's your body letting you know, hey, something needs to be addressed, and then in the beginning, it may be those small signs, just those little things. But if you keep on, not addressing it and pushing it to the back burner, then it leads into some bigger things of like, all right, let me slow you down, and now you can't breathe. And now so you can't sleep and you're like, man, what's going on? And it was like, your body's like, I tried to warn you back then, you know what I mean? But, I'm trying to help you, you know what I'm saying? And so that awareness, I think that awareness is key. And you mentioned about, even with your coworkers, and that was one of the things that allowed me recently, even to get to the point where I was like, I have to take this mental health day, right? Because the job where I'm working at is 24 hours. So it never shuts down. The plant never shuts down.
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
And so it's like, all right, they gotta have somebody there. And because it's 24 hours, they will schedule us like back to back.
Yeah.
So if you don't say, hey, give me a day off, they won't give you a day off. They'll literally just schedule you every day until you say something. You know what I mean? And so knowing that and then having a conversation just with my other coworkers, at times it is like, man, I'm tired of being here. Like this is going whatever. And even watching how your coworkers begin to get irritated with one another. And these are people that we work with every day. And it's not so much that I don't like you, but it's the buildup. It's the buildup of seeing you every day. It's the buildup to being in this place that, where we work at is dark. You know what I'm saying? So it's dark, it's gloomy, it's a lot of different gases. So we got to wear, masks and stuff at different areas to be able to breathe. But like all of that affects you. You know what I'm saying? And I was working the midnight shift. So that's even worse because now it's nighttime when your body should be resting. Yeah. And you're up. So all of these things start to play a part in not just my, mental health and how I'm feeling, but all of my coworkers, and so just lately just having different conversations with some of my coworkers. And I'm just like, yeah, it's getting to all of us. You know what I mean? And I can't help you, but I can help me. You know what I mean? I'm like, I need a day off. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just need a day off. And you mentioned about, getting back in nature, man, I think about, and I don't know, who all of your audience may be believers, right? And so, but as a believer, we think about, the Garden of, not the Garden of Eden. Yes, the Garden of Eden. When God created the heavens and earth and put man in the garden, let's just say in the garden, right? Yep. When you think about what that was and just imagining all the way back to the beginning, there was no houses, there was no cars, you know what I mean? That was all the stuff that we created. None of that was there. It was just the greenery, the animals, the nature, all of this. And I think we have to get back to that space every now and then. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really know much about grounding, but I know how I feel when I put my feet in the water and I just walk on the beach. You know what I'm saying? I don't know much about, being a tree hugger or whatever, but I have done it before. and I have walked, just in nature. Remember, like last year, one of the hikes that I went on, we actually saw a woodpecker, and he was like right there. Like we could have really like touched him if we wanted to, but he's really like, going to town on a tree or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, wow, this is nature really, really doing what it does and allowing ourselves to detach from everything that we've created and podcasts and videos and, Zoom calls and all, no, just detach from all of that. Go back to the original space where the original man was and kind of reconnect with that person and nature and the way that God created us to be in the beginning. You know what I mean? And I think every now and then we need to do that. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's a hike, whether it's going to the beach, just going out in nature and really just being able to reconnect, on that level of your emotions, your body, just being in that space, man, and kind of reconnected with that peaceful place, because in our our day to day, we got so much stuff going on, man. It ain't even crazy. Even when we don't even think about it, our mind is still thinking about, okay, what's the next thing, and so that's why I said even yesterday, like I had to literally force myself because even once I get up, my mind is like, okay, I need to do this, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. You know what I mean? Yeah, I know it needs to be done. It needed to be done yesterday, so it'll be all right with one more day. You know what I'm saying? And so, but I think that awareness to really be able to take a second, look at our environment, look at the people in our environment, look at ourselves, how is all of these things affecting me right now? And is my body, is my mind, is my coworkers, is my environment, is everything around me telling me, hey, you need to slow down. You need to take a break. You know what I'm saying? Because I think it does. I think our whole atmosphere around us lets us know, but I think a lot of times we ignore it. Like you said, okay, I've been through this before. I'll just push through. Like, yeah, you can't push through this time. You know what I mean? I'm 49. Right. You know what I mean? Right. So I know something like, Joe, you can't just push through. Your body not gonna let you. Like, no, I'm not letting you do me. Your body's like, I'm not letting you do me like this no more. You know what I mean? Like, you're not gonna keep stressing me out. And sometimes, that's what happens.
Let me ask you this. Was there ever a time where, because I mean now, especially I'm in my upper 40s too, and when I see signs, like I respect them a lot more. There are times I was like, I can do a little more today, but then maybe tomorrow I don't do anything. But was there ever a time where you kept hitting the override button, you kept ignoring, and somehow, some way, either cost you or it affected your mental health to the point where either your quality of life went down, or maybe you were like me and I was in a debilitated state where I didn't want to leave my bedroom?
Mm-hmm. Well, so I would say when I went through my bout of depression and suicide ideation, this was some years ago. There was a lot of things that happened. Like you mentioned, different things that you have been going through that all hit at the same time, right? So last year I did my first TEDx talk, right?
Nice.
I talked about my dealing with suicide ideations, right? And what happened was in that time period, the economy had went down. So I'm a bricklayer, right? And so a lot of in construction, it deals with, the economy, which is affected by things that's going on in the country. So we kind of was in a recession, should I say. So, the work wasn't necessarily there. So now I'm going in debt, right? Which added to things on the home front. So now I'm going through a divorce. You know what I mean? And then dealing with depression just around those two things, first of all. Then my mother-in-law, who I was very close to, died. Then my mom died. You know what I'm saying? And so like all of these things in the same period, all of things which I can't control. Like there's nothing I can do about any of these things, So finding myself in this space where I'm feeling hopeless and helpless because I can't control anything, and so I found myself in that depression. And so having, came out of that, I've always been, or should I say, I have been a little more aware now because of how deep I got into it, like to the point, I didn't get to the point where I actually tried to take my life, but I actually got to the point where I was thinking about it. And you know what I'm saying? If it was a little bit more, I probably would have actually started planning. You know what I mean? Like I was at that gate. You know what I mean? Where I could have at any time walked into it. You know, and I think it definitely was a blessing from God to have me. I had this experience with my daughter at that time, and my daughter was probably like 7 or 8 years old at that time, and we're in the front yard, you know, at the house, and I had, you know, her little kiddie pool, and I had the sprinklers on and stuff, and so she's just running around playing in the water, and I'm sitting on the porch watching her, you know, and she's playing and just, you know, just kind of running around. Then she turns and she runs to me on the porch, and you know, she runs to me, and then she starts crying, and I'm like, what's wrong? You know what I mean? Like nothing happened. Like I'm sitting there watching you play. And she said, I miss my grandmothers. Because at this point, both of her grandmothers had passed away, you know, which again was the things that were adding to what I was dealing with and even getting me to the space of, you know, feeling suicidal. And that moment I thought about it. It was like, man, you know, my daughter was a daddy's girl and still is. My daughter's 22 now. So, it's, you know, it's been a long journey. But at that moment, I was like, what would happen to my daughter if I'm not here? You know what I mean? Like, she's already lost two of the most important people in her life to the point that in this moment, she recognized that they're not here. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's different when you're a kid and things happen and you just, you know, you're just a kid. You don't know. But like, no, in her little mind, in her space, even in the midst of her having as much fun as she was playing, she still recognized that something was missing in her life. And I'm like, what would happen to her if I was missing too? You know what I'm saying? And so it was that thing that was like, I can't go through with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't even put no more energy into that. You know what I'm saying? I gotta be here for this little girl. I gotta be, if I don't have the strength to be here for myself, I have to muscle up enough strength to be here for her, to make sure she's good. You know, and that kind of was the thing that sparked that turning point for myself and really having to push through and, you know, to be in the moment, you know, to be present, even when I didn't necessarily have the strength for myself. You know, I began to focus on my daughter. It's like, all right, let me do the best that I can to make sure she's good and she's okay. And, you know, that was the start of me starting to build that comeback. And as I, you know, helped, you know, focus on her, then I was able to start, you know, building myself back up in different areas and, you know, get through that season. And like, all right, I'm good now. So since then, you know, I'm very aware of different things. And because I have these conversations now more too, to make other men aware. So again, like I said, just recently being able to, you know, take into consideration of the things that was going on with me and be like, okay, I need a day. You know, I'm aware of those things now and I pay attention to the signs now. You know what I mean? And so, you know, it's been a while since, you know, like I said, my daughter's 22 now. So it's been a while since that was part of the darkest space I've ever been in my life, you know, and I haven't been back there, thank God, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, it was through that experience that now I'm more aware and I'm like, yeah, I gotta pay attention to my body. I gotta pay attention to things that's going around me. And I think one of the things that we have to do, especially as men, but as people too, we have to get ahead of some things. You know what I'm saying? We talked about earlier about, you know, the church, and we talked about therapy. And the thing that we have to start doing is start going there before something's wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like we can't start praying after we're in the pit. Like we're here now. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we definitely want to pray to get out, but you could have had some prayers in place before you got there. You know what I mean? If we go see the therapy or the doctor or the psychiatrist, whatever it is that we need for our natural bodies, if we start doing those things now, then when we do hit something that's like, all right, boom, something happens, you know, that kind of puts us in a place where we already got some some preventative measures that was already in place. So even though this thing is bad, it's not as bad as it could have been. You know what I'm saying? And because I've already been working on it, even though it has knocked me back a couple steps, I have enough strength at least to already start being able to start pulling myself out of that space.
Absolutely.
You know, but it takes some awareness and, you know, like I said, some preventative things that we have to do ahead of time. Like we can't wait until I'm having a nervous breakdown. I can't wait till I'm in the hospital, you know, and I can't breathe. I can't wait till, you know, my body starts reacting certain ways to certain things. Like, no, you got to just address these things now so that if it becomes a problem, you already have at least some of, you know, the answers and some of the ways to get out of it already in place. And so, yeah, I think that's where we at. We just got to, you know, get ahead of some things.
Yeah, man, you know, it reminds me, this is 2025. So 2018 was kind of when I had my breakdown. And, you know, I was in 2023, I was 5 years removed from it and, you know, kind of feeling myself, you know, but actually it was on Father's Day. I was trying to drive down and go visit my father. And out of nowhere, I had another panic attack. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? Like, I thought because I was so far removed, like this can't happen again. Oh yeah, it can. And then I sat down, I was like, yeah, the lead into this, there were some habits that, you know, I probably, you know, could have done differently that would have prevented this from happening. But to your point about having the tools and stuff in place, so instead of it taking me 4 years to recover, it just took a couple of weeks. And I was already in therapy, you know? So I let them know, actually, they actually warned me. They were like, I'm starting to feel like you could spiral here. And I'm like, man, good. You know what I mean? I done been to the dark dungeon, you know what I mean? It's like, well, you can go back, you know? So I was sitting there like, you know, it felt so foreign until it happened again. And I was like, oh my gosh, here we go. But I was like, wait a minute, dude, you're not that same guy from 2018. You got your therapy in place. You know about your breathing exercises. You know how to dysregulate the nervous system. You've already been to the cardiologist. Your heart's checked out. You've already had the blood work. That's fine. So now you just need to chill out a little bit. You got a little crazy with all the activity and stuff that you were doing. You weren't sleeping when you were supposed to. You ain't been to the gym in months, you know, and you're not hydrated. So there were things I could identify right away. Right. And I got my journal that I made for other people to use. I was like, you know what? I have to practice what I preach now. You know, and get back to the things I'm telling everybody else. You need to do these things. Like, well, no, you need to do them too. Yeah. You know, but the recovery was so much faster and I didn't lose my confidence like I did before. I didn't want to go anywhere that first time around. You know, I mean, if it was going to the kitchen to get something to eat, use the bathroom, brush my teeth, that was it. If we had to go somewhere or I've had a doctor's appointment, I was just like, oh my God, it was torturous because I was that dysregulated. But where I want to go next is if you could identify, you mentioned a couple of things, but if you could identify like 3 to 5 like top tools or things that you use that help you either recover or maintain some type of accountability and recovery. One of the key things that you mentioned with your daughter and a key theme point that I would bring out is the importance of connection. Right? A lot of people think I'll just heal quietly. I don't want anybody to know what I'm going through, so I'll just try to heal on my own. And for especially something dealing with mental health, I haven't seen anybody do that. Yeah. Not the people that have been watched their podcasts or books. I've never seen anybody say, yep, I just did this, and this, and I was able to recover all by myself. Not possible. And really, there's elements of shame of not wanting to appear weak and vulnerable. But I found that vulnerability was probably one of the most powerful tools among self-compassion, among acceptance. But vulnerability, and the definition I gave in my book, Leaving Jupiter and Navigating Your Anxiety Recovery, a little plug there for you guys. Go to Amazon, get it, or my website, beyond-anxiety.com. But vulnerability I define as being open in trusted environments, right? True, you can't just open up with anybody, right? Because not everybody either has the maturity, the expertise sometimes, or your best interest in mind if you're telling things that you would normally share with people, right? So it does take a little discernment to say, is this somebody I can really talk to? But this is why I advocate for therapy so much, because I'm like, because of HIPAA and state laws, that conversation, unless with the exception of you either expressing harm to yourself or others, that conversation does not leave that office.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to worry about somebody turning their nose and be like, yeah, we cool, but I remember you shared with me that, you were having these types of thoughts or whatever, and now you don't want to share with anybody anymore. Right.
Yeah.
But getting back to the original question, what would you say your top 3 to 5 tools that have been extremely helpful in your mental health journey?
Well, I think you hit them right on the head, right? The first one would be being vulnerable, and not just for you, but for others, right? To be in a space where you're free to share. And when you share, you begin to open up the doors for other people to share. And that strengthens you more and also helps them. So I'll give you a prime example. This happened just a couple months ago. Like I said, I'm a bricklayer. And so usually when there's a bricklayer, I have a laborer that's working with me, or laborers, if it's a group of us. But this particular day, it was just me and one other guy. It was just me, the bricklayer, and I had one guy who was a laborer. And we had worked around each other because, it's usually a lot of us. But this particular day, it was just the two of us on this job that we were doing, like just me and him, right? And so we were talking, and he was kind of like, well, what did you do last weekend? And I had a speaking event that prior weekend. So I was like, yeah, we had this event and I spoke, and, I got this podcast and, everything. So we started to have a conversation, and he asked about, what was the podcast about? And I was like, it's about hope and healing. And I talk about things that I've been through, my divorce and depression and suicide ideations. And when I said suicide ideations, it kind of intrigued him a little bit. And he was like, oh, really? And so I kind of gave him my story, and he was like, well, I've had my bouts with suicide ideations too. And he began to tell me his story, right?
Okay.
Of not only just it being him, but even his father. And unfortunately, his father actually went through with it. And he was the one that had found his father's body. You know what I'm saying? And so, we're having this conversation. The conversation part is like 30 minutes, and then we go to break, and then we come back from break. And when we come back from break, he was like, Ernest, I want to tell you something. Like, I think you're a real cool guy to talk to, because the conversation we just had, I've never had with anybody. You know what I'm saying? And so, but it took my vulnerability to open up that door for him to be able to share that. And I'm sure that was a relief for him to be able to just say, okay, this is what I have been dealing with. So number one, that vulnerability. And but then number two, we talk about, it goes to community, to find it that safe space, whether it's the community of one person or the community of a group of people that you are allowed to go to be able to express that, right? And so with Facebook and things of that nature, with the internet being the way it is, it's easy to find those groups where you need to be a part of. You know what I mean? So, and I talk a lot about bereavement, because bereavement, after losing my mom and losing my mother-in-law, around the same time, and dealing with that, and I started going to bereavement, that plays such a big part in my strengthening myself, that even after my sessions was over, I stayed and became a volunteer for over a year. You know what I mean? Because I loved it so much. And those people that came in, and even the lady that was over it, she was like, Ernest, I really appreciate you being here, because your voice and talking to the other people as different families was coming and going, because of different hardships that they were dealing with, of losing loved ones. And you know what I'm saying? She was just like, I thank you for being here, because your voice has really, helped this group or whatever. And so finding those communities that you need, to be a part of, I think those two things will be the very first things that we can start doing, finding our voice, first of all, where we are, and be willing to open up, because that helps us and it helps the people that we connect to. But even with that, finding that right community where it's safe to do so, like you said, not just spilling your guts to everybody, and then, come back to bite you in some way. And lastly, I think that just that awareness, and doing our due diligence of trying to find that, that information that we need, trying to find that right podcast that feeds our mind, find those right books, find those, the right environments, whether it's at church or, a men's group or whatever, just finding those spaces and being aware of making sure that we're getting and actively seeking the information that we need to make a difference, within ourselves. And so that we're not just out here, swinging in the wind, but like, no, there's some tips, there's some tools that I need, there's some books that I need to read, there's a, therapist I need to make my appointment with, there's a church service I need to go to feed my spiritual man, like all of those things, being aware and then being actively putting those things in place, so that when we need them, we have them, and not wait until, it's time to build a house and now you're looking for your hammer. You know what I mean? Like, no, I got the hammer, I got the nails. So when it's time to start building, I'm already coming ready to go. And so I think those three, would be good for us to start at.
Good. Yeah. So we are getting to the end of the show here. I want to do two things. I want to give you the final word to people that are struggling and then tell us what's next for you and where people can find you. But before that, we got the quick round that I mentioned to you.
Yeah.
This is just a fun thing I like to do. I was on a podcast and they had a different name for it, but I find it to be extremely fun. It gives the audience a chance to get to know you. They're kind of this or that questions or what's your favorite. So like I mentioned to you before, don't overthink it. There's no right or wrong answer. There's no judgment. Like it's just, it's what you like and it's who you are. So I can't be like, well, that ain't right.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, so we're going to fire these off. There's 10 of them. And as quickly as you can, answer these, we'll be good to go. So we're going to start with number 1, Pepsi or Coke? Take it too long, dog. Take it too long, man.
Because I was finna say Pepsi, but Pepsi has got me in so much trouble, man. And not to throw it off, but Pepsi got me in a lot of trouble with my sugar being up. So yeah. I would prefer Pepsi over Coke, but I don't need neither one of them. You know what I'm saying?
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, number 2, LeBron or Michael Jordan?
Jordan.
All right. Mario or Sonic?
I have no idea what that was first.
Super Mario Brothers or Sonic the Hedgehog?
Oh, Mario. Okay. Yeah, Mario all day.
Yep. Who's your favorite song artist?
Song artist? One of my favorite of all time is Lauryn Hill.
Okay. What's your favorite movie?
That's a good one. I would say Love Jones.
All right. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Early bird.
All right. Pick between these two: win the lottery or live twice as long.
I would say win the lottery.
All right. Here's another deep one: go back in time to a select year or fast forward in the future to a select year.
I would probably say go back in time, because if I'm able to go back in time, I probably can adjust some things.
Got you. All right. What current book are you reading? Or what was the last book you read?
So I'm into audiobooks now, and I think what's the name? Give me I'm gonna tell you exactly what it is, because I've been listening to it. Give it to you in real time. The name of the book is I know what it is now. Never Eat Alone.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And then the last one, what's your favorite TV game show?
TV game show. I would probably say Wheel of Fortune. That was one that I liked it a lot when I was.
All right. Yeah. We grew up on that was the last one. We grew up on Price is Right, and if you were sick home from school, you would watch that, eat some sardine crackers and soup.
Yeah.
And I think after that, General Hospital came on. So like that one just embedded in me, and it don't matter. Like some cool ones kind of came out more recently, but I'm like, man, Bob Barker was my guy. But
I like Family Fruit is okay. And I enjoyed that. But just for myself, I probably would say, like I said, Wheel of Fortune, because I liked that to be able to read and try to figure out the things that, so yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for letting the audience get to know you. I want to give you the last word for the listeners here and giving them just the encouragement on for those who are struggling. What are your final parting words to them? And what's next for you? And where can we find you? Your social medias and YouTubes and all that good stuff. So, Mike's in your
All right. First of all, thank you again for having me. I definitely appreciate it. Definitely love being on this side of the mic. And I'll start with where I am. You guys can find me on YouTube. If you go to YouTube to the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network channel on YouTube, you can find the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, as well as the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, and 2 other podcasts that I have on there too. And hopefully we'll be bringing you more podcasts, on that channel. So you can find me on YouTube at Deal to Heal, the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. And of course, listen to the podcast, Deal to Heal with E. James podcast and the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. You can look me up on my website, earnestjamesspeakslife.com. And, that way find out more about me and also to hire me to come out as a speaker or a workshop facilitator. My next thing that I'm working on, I got some ebooks, ebooks at ejames.com. You guys can find my ebooks there. But the next thing that I'm working on now, I started a Facebook community, private community on Facebook. And my next thing will be to build out an actual school community, which would be a paid community, but to be able to offer so much more than I can offer on Facebook. So that's probably be the next big thing that I'm working on. But a word of advice, should I say, for anyone that's struggling, and I was listening to, as we talked and different things that was being said, one of the things that I thought about, like going back to the beginning of mankind, as a believer, one of the things that God said was, it's not good for man to be alone. And there's so many times that we find ourselves in positions and places where we feel helpless and hopeless is because we're trying to do it alone, and even in my own story, once I kind of came out of my depression and started to share my experience on podcasts, one of my sisters called me and said, how did you go through all of that? And none of us know. I got 8 siblings, and she's like, how none of us know? Not one of us. And I was like, we're not having the conversations, because even myself in that time was trying to go at it alone, and so another thing that the Bible says is that there's nothing new under the sun. So there's nothing that you're dealing with that somebody else haven't already dealt with or someone else is dealing with at the same time. And so when we start reaching out to one another, we start finding those communities, we start reaching out for help, we start asking for help, we start sharing our story so that we connect with the same people that have the same story and we begin to help each other. When we start doing that, that's when we start finding our strength and being able to, uplift ourselves and uplift one another. And so my main thing to say out of all of that is don't try to do it alone. Don't try to do it by yourself. Like find help, ask for help, reach out for help because it's there. And it's when we start helping one another, we start looking out for one another. That's when things start changing.
Hey, that's a perfect word to end on. Mr. Earnest James, thank you for being on the show and sharing your wisdom, knowledge, and experience. Please go follow Mr. James, his various social media platforms. I will include all that information in the description of whatever platform you're listening to this on. You'll be able to find and follow and go check out the different things that he's doing. As always, thank you for tuning in to the Beyond Anxiety podcast. I'm your host, Darius Fennell. You know the slogan, find your recovery path. Till next time, take care.